Hello, I'm Infamous Fear. What's that? It's time for a change of pace, actually. The film I'm looking at today doesn't really fit into either of my two categories. It's got a lot of homoerotic themes which drive the whole plot, but it's not exactly a queer movie. It's also set in the 1940s, but it isn't really a period drama either. So why am I bothering to take the time? Well, to put it bluntly, I couldn't pass up this movie's cast. David Bowie, who needs no introduction. Ryuichi Sakamoto, Japanese new wave pioneer who at the time was doing stuff like this with his band Yellow Magic Orchestra. This is the first film he scored, and more recently he's done scores like this. Beat Takeshi Kitano, or Takeshi Kitano, or Takeshi. Whatever. You may know him as the Takeshi from Takeshi's Castle, or maybe as his role in the extremely badass film Violent Cop. And finally, some other guy. Hopefully you're all just as excited as I am. This is Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. And I like the way you kiss me, don't know if I should. The movie begins with Sergeant Hara, played by Takeshi Kitano, going to fetch the titular character Lawrence for help with translation.
Wait a minute, this guy is the main character? David Bowie doesn't play Mr. Lawrence, this guy does? This is bullshit!
Yes, this is Lawrence, played by Tom Conti, whoever that is. This is Java in 1942. We begin the movie with a pan across the grounds of the prisoner of war camp, set to some incredibly sweet music. Hara takes Lawrence to see two men, being beaten and tied up on the ground, punished because the Korean one apparently had sex with the white one. I'll let Hara explain it.
Kanemoto, お前一体何をしたんだ?
Kanemoto, お前どうやってやったんだ? お前のピストルだか大砲だか知らんが、どうやってその白物ケツにぶち込んだ? 口が達者じゃねえんだから、実際ここでやってみろ!
Now, it's hard to tell whether the sex was consensual, but Hara challenges the Korean guy to have sex with the Dutch guy and then kill himself. As a consequence, the Korean guy tries to commit hakakiri, or seppuku, suicide by ritual disembowelment. Now, usually, a person commits seppuku because they have to atone for great shame they have brought upon themselves with their life. And this doesn't make sense. Why is Hara so homophobic? Why is homosexuality something you have to atone for with your life? Homosexuality is part of the samurai culture, and it isn't really considered an immoral thing, so why? Is it because it was possibly a rape, or because the other guy was white? I don't quite get it. Well, unfortunately for you, it's never explained.
彼話改めて恥を与えられねばならないのか?
恥? 釜を掘られても抵抗しなかった不慮に恥などあるか!
Hara calls forth Captain Yonoi, played by Ryuichi Sakamoto. In the next scene we see Yonoi going to attend a military trial. The man on trial is one Jack Selliers, played by David Bowie. He was a paratrooper captured in enemy territory and is being charged with guerrilla warfare. However, the proceedings are interrupted by a dramatic zoom into Captain Yonoi's face, as we see that the thin white duke has had quite an effect on him. I wouldn't worry about it. David Bowie has that effect on just about everyone. Jack refuses to explain his past, which seems a little suspicious, so I'm forced to conclude that he was a gigolo or something.
My past is my business.
He points out that the trial isn't particularly fair, so Yonoi asks to question him by reciting Hamlet.
To be or not to be? That is the question, Major Selliers.
Yonoi asks Jack to prove that he was beaten, which Jack does by taking off his shirt, sending Yonoi reeling from the glowing splendour of all that half-naked David Bowie, which is pretty understandable. So Jack is condemned to death, and when the guards come to fetch him, he's sitting there pretending that he's being shaved by a barber.
Good day, Fritz. Yes. You have family waiting for you, Corporal. Wife and two kids, sir?
Naturally, the Japanese hate mime, so they beat the crap out of him and put him in front of a firing squad. Well, that was a short movie. Oh wait, no! Turns out they just fired a whole bunch of blanks at him.
That's a good one.
Back to the camp. Lawrence goes to see Hara and begs him to protect the Dutch guy. Hara accordingly asks a bunch of invasive questions about homosexuality.
この男をシュリブの方で預かってくれないか保護してほしい。
どういうわけだ。
いずれ皆が知るだろう。わからないか。
分かった。全員がこいつの釜を掘りたがると思うんだろう。そうか。やっぱりイギリス人は全員釜か。
バカな。私はあなたの助けがいる。
日本軍人は敵に助けを求めたりしない。おい、お前は釜か。
Yeah. He says you're homosexual. Are you?
No, sir, I am not.
違うって言ってる。
お前らお釜が怖いんだろ。侍はお釜だと怖くはない。
Well, that's the point that the gender hipster raised before. However, before Hara gets a chance to explain the super gay ways of the samurai and how they contrast with all those English homosexuals, a new prisoner arrives. Or, as Hara puts it...
また一人お釜が増えたぞ。
Oh, Hara, you sure do have a way with words. Jack has arrived in the camp. He falls over. Lawrence recognises him and tries to help him up. Lawrence gets beaten. Yanoi beats the soldiers who beat Lawrence. God, it's like a conga line of beatings. When will it ever end? Anyway, Yanoi sends Jack to the sick bay and asks Lawrence about him.
In any case, he was a soldier. Why are you so interested in him?
Gay shadowing! Then, the most British man ever arrives. It's funny you should say that, considering he's played by Australian actor Jack Thompson, thereby making him the only British prisoner of war who isn't played by a Brit. Anyway, Yanoi demands that the most British man ever tell him the names of all the ammunition and weaponry experts in the camp. The most British man ever refuses, and Yanoi tells him that if he refuses to give any information, he will be replaced as camp commanding officer.
Replace me? What are you talking about? Replace me with whom?
This armaments thing, I think we could string that out for quite some time, don't you? Huh? I mean, young Tojo will never notice the difference. What do you think?
They're not fools, you know, sir. The Japanese.
John, they know how badly the war's going for them. A couple of months, it could all be over.
Then why not try and stay alive for a couple of months? Sir, I know these people. I wish you'd be guided by my knowledge.
I know these people too. They're the enemy.
Lawrence goes to see Jack at the sick bay and declares that he's going to stay there to make sure that Jack gets looked after. Later that night, Hara goes to wake Lawrence and the two go and bother Jack. Yanoi wants to make Jack commanding officer instead of the most British man ever. Hara and Lawrence then begin to debate whether it's better to commit suicide or to be a prisoner of war.
俺はお前が死んだらもっとお前が好きになったのに。お前ほどの将校がなぜこんな恥に耐えることができるんだ。なぜ自決しない。
我々は恥とは呼ばない。我々もプレオンになったのを喜んでいるわけではない。逃げたいし、またあなたと戦いたい。生き物の道は取りたくないから自殺もしない。
死ぬのが怖いだけだ。俺は違う。
Jack wakes up and the three talk about why Yanoi saw fit to save him.
What on earth possessed Yonoi to save me, do you think?
I don't know.
Later, Yanoi comes by to watch Jack sleeping.
Make him well. Heal him quickly.
And that's our Captain Yonoi's voice, isn't it?
Yes. He's been screaming his head off ever since you got here.
If he's got something on his mind, why doesn't he come out with it?
I rather think he is.
Perhaps we're both on the same ladder.
So Yanoi has a crush on Jack, and Jack can recognise it and is potentially homosexual himself?
Zing! Correct! You win a prize!
What's the prize?
Given the context of this movie, the prize is a beating! Anyway, Yanoi confesses to Lawrence that he feels ashamed because all of his fellow officers were killed in the 1936 uprising when Yanoi was away in Manchuria. Next, we see that poor bloody Korean guy who has to commit seppuku again. The most British man ever complains about having to watch the execution, and Yunoi tells him that he is dishonourable. Yes, the cultural clash is once again rearing its ugly head. Seppuku happens and the Dutch guy bites his tongue off, swallows it and dies. Yunoi, however, is still displeased with the most British man ever and his lack of honour, and tells the men that they have to fast for 48 hours because they are spiritually weak. The fast begins. Yunoi is taking stock of the men in their barracks, and he notices that Jack is missing. Luckily, just then, Jack walks in the door with a basket of flowers for the memory of the Dutch guy. Well, at least that's what he says, because all the men then start eating them. However, shit then starts to go down because an inspection is called. Oh no, the men are going to get in trouble for not observing the fast. Jack says he'll take all the responsibility, and when Captain Yunoi arrives and demands to know the purpose of the flowers, all he sees is Jack standing there eating them while the other prisoners sing.
Rock of ages, cleft for me, let me hide myself in thee.
Are some of those prisoners women? Because that's some very feminine singing. Naturally, this makes Captain Yunoi mad!
Who do you think you are? Are you an evil spirit?
Yeah. And one of yours, I hope.
The other guards find a radio, and now they have an excuse to lock Jack away in solitary. Captain Yunoi's Batman breaks into Jack's cell in the middle of the night, hoping to kill him and end the Captain's bizarre infatuation. Jack gets the upper hand and hits the Batman on the head. He runs away, finds Lawrence, and cuts him free. Jack picks up Lawrence and carries him, and then they run into Yunoi and the other guards. And the music is so badass! Poor Lawrence has been beaten up so much that he's beginning to sound like the Queen.
Jack, I think it has taken a bit of a shine to you.
Well, that's an understatement. Yunoi's Batman says he is responsible for Jack escaping and commits seppuku. God, there's a lot of seppuku in this movie. Lawrence comes to talk with Yunoi at his Batman's funeral ceremony. However, this was all a ploy to get Lawrence there and sentence him to death over the whole radio incident.
You mean I'm to die? Because you think if there's a crime, then it must be punished. And it doesn't matter who is punished.
Yes.
You don't by any chance a Gilbert and Sullivan fan, are you?
What?
Judging on how offensive the Mikado was, I'd say not. Yunoi says he has to punish someone, whether the person he punishes is the guilty party or not. Lawrence then has a freak out and smashes everything, so he's thrown into the cell next to Jack's. Lawrence then reminisces about some woman he met in Singapore, who is the only female mentioned in this film.
I only met her twice.
Jack, on the other hand, is feeling guilty about an event that happened in his past, and we have a flashback!
Who is she? Your turn in the confessional.
I'm afraid I've not had many romantic interludes of great importance.
That sounds a little bit gay to me.
My expertise lies in the field of betrayal.
Some sweet singing is heard, and the singer turns out to be Jack's little brother. Young Jack and his brother go to church, which is full of tone-deaf people.
Looking for a city where we'll never die.
Well, maybe not that tone-deaf. On the way home from the church, they are accosted by bullies.
Hey, hunchback. Get out of the way.
Hey, stop it, you boys! What on earth do you think you're doing?
Are you alright?
Hang on, the bully's evidently from New Zealand and so is Jack's brother. So why is Jack enlisted in the British Army and why does he have a British accent?
I'm with the British Army.
You may have just created a plot hole there. Anyway...
My brother was scared out of his skin when the time came for him to go to school. I was in the 6th form, top of my class and head of my house. Even so, my brother lived every day in absolute terror of being revealed.
Revealed as a what? It turns out that Jack's brother has a back deformity. When the two are older, Jack's brother comes to school with him and is to be part of a hazing ritual.
What can you do?
I hear he can sing!
Oh, he's one of those, is he?
Yes, sing!
A huge group of boys terrorise Jack's brother, causing him to never sing again. Jack feels guilty for not standing up for him and for being ashamed of him.
My brother never sang another note. Ever. Last time I saw him was at his wedding. Over the years, I became, you might say, a wanted person. I really wanted to see him again. I never did. I was 32, eligible bachelor, reasonably successful lawyer, and absolutely nothing.
Suddenly, Jack and Lawrence are dragged out of their cells and taken to see Sergeant Hara, who is giggling maniacally.
ローレンスさん、ファーゼルクリスマス、ご存知かな？
ファーゼルクリスマス、サンタクロースのことですね。
今夜私、ファーゼルクリスマス、私、ファーゼルクリスマス、ファーゼルクリスマス。
He thinks he's Santa Claus.
Hara, filled with the Christmas spirit of sake, has found another prisoner he can blame the radio incident on, and he lets Jack and Lawrence free. He then wishes Lawrence a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Lawrence. Merry Christmas.
Bonkers.
Yonoi is not happy about Hara's unauthorised decision to free the two men. Then, the most British man ever turns up to enrage him even more, causing Yonoi to demand that all the prisoners go on parade.
Listen, John.
What?
I wish I could sing.
Of course you can bloody sing! You're David Bowie! Yonoi turns up, infused with the spirit of dickery. He demands that the prisoners fetch even the most severely wounded Neil men to stand on parade as well, leading to an excruciatingly slow march of the wounded. And the music goes all turkey shoot for some reason. Captain Yonoi appears to be going insane and insists that the men aren't really ill.
Christ. He's going to die.
He's dead!
You! Get over here!
He then takes out his rage on the most British man ever, condemning him to death for refusing to tell him about any weapons experts. Suddenly, Jack gets a flash of inspiration and does this. Felled by my own repressed homosexuality! Then again, I'd probably do that if I got kissed by David Bowie. It's an understandable reaction. Jack is punished for the crime of being too sexy or something by Captain Yanoi's successor, who buries him and leaves him to die in the open. The most British man ever tells Lawrence that he may as well commit seppuku now, and the prisoners sing a hymn.
In pastures green, he leadeth me, the quiet waters by.
Jack has another flashback indicating that he wants to atone for the sin of being complicit in the crushing of his brother's confidence. When he awakes, Yunoi has come by to cut off a lock of his hair. Later, Lawrence comes to see Hara, who is in jail, waiting to be executed.
I am ready to die.
But I don't understand. My crimes were no different from any other soldiers.
You're the victim of men who think that they're right. And the truth is, of course, that nobody's right.
It turns out that both Jack and Yunoi died, and Yunoi gave Jack's hair to Lawrence to take back to Japan to make a shrine.
Lawrence! Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence.
And then the movie ends. Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence is a very good movie, with a great cast, fascinating character performances, and really damn cool music. It's also got homoeroticism and David Bowie, and it also got a Criterion release. So how come nobody knows about it? The film is partially in Japanese and is directed by a Japanese director, which means that the viewer has to read subtitles. David Bowie actually acts in this, instead of just walking on screen and being David Bowie, which is what we generally want him to do.
I believe I might be of service.
Also, he doesn't sing.
Rock of Ages, cleft for me, let me hide myself in thee.
The story doesn't end happily, and it's far more about character than a series of dramatically differing events. The setting doesn't change, and it probably contains a little bit too much ritual disembowelment to be palatable. Is it historically accurate? I'm not an expert on the Pacific Theatre and prisoner of war camps, but I'll do my best. The movie was based on the memoirs of a man who was in a prisoner of war camp, so it comes from a historical primary source. The Japanese were notorious for treating their prisoners incredibly badly, and although we see frequent beatings in the movie, for the most part we don't see the deprivation the prisoners were forced to go through in terms of food. Possibly the prisoners in this camp are treated slightly better, because they have Lawrence as a go-between, and he lived in Japan before the war and can identify and communicate with the captors.
What is wrong with them, Lawrence?
They were a nation of anxious people. And they could do nothing individually. So they went mad.
Hara, at least, almost seems to be Lawrence's friend, and Lawrence has definitely forgiven his captors after the conflict is over. It's interesting that the movie was made by a Japanese director, because most media about prisoner of war camps is from a Western perspective, produced by Westerners. However, although the Japanese aggressors are humanised and have their good points, they're still shown to be capable of brutality. The main theme of this movie, other than closeted homosexuality, is culture clash. The Japanese have a level of contempt for the Western prisoners because the prisoners have surrendered, and surrendering is dishonourable to them. The prisoners, on the other hand, don't understand their captors. The most British man ever, for one, antagonises the Japanese through his lack of cultural sensitivity. It's difficult to know why Captain Yunoi is in such turmoil over his feelings, knowing the role of homosexuality in traditional Japanese culture. Is it because Jack is white or because he's a prisoner? It's difficult to understand the reasons behind the conflict, but at least it's compelling.
Why will you not fight me? If you defeat me, you will be free.
So that was Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. It's bleak but good, and you should definitely make sure to watch it. And if you'll excuse me, I'm feeling a bit hungry.
To cope with feelings aroused in me. My hands in the soil.